The courtroom held its breath as 5-year-old Emily Carter stepped through the heavy wooden doors. Her tiny hand gripped the leash of a German shepherd named Rex, his coat marked by a long, jagged scar. All eyes followed the little girl as she moved slowly, but with quiet determination, toward the witness stand. Judge Mark Sullivan leaned forward slightly. Years on the bench had taught him to recognize the weight of a moment, and this one hung heavy. Emily was the only witness to an attempted abduction, and the entire case hinged on her. The problem? She hadn't spoken a word since the day it happened. Across the room, Richard Hale sat at the defense table. His expression was calm, almost smug. A 45-year-old software engineer with a quiet demeanor. Hale had been arrested after a witness placed him at the scene. But with no physical evidence, no confession, and a silent witness, his lawyer had crafted a strategy built entirely on doubt. But everything shifted the moment Emily sat in the witness chair. Her green eyes locked on Hale. Her fingers twitched, a small, deliberate motion she had learned in therapy. Almost no one noticed, except two, Judge Sullivan and Rex. The dog's reaction was immediate. His body stiffened, ears perked, muscles coiled like a spring. A low, guttural growl rose from deep within his chest. His golden eyes locked on Hale, unmoving. A ripple of unease spread through the room. This wasn't just a trained dog responding to stress. This was something deeper, something instinctive. Judge Sullivan slammed his gavel. The crack echoed like thunder. "This court will recess for 15 minutes, he said sharply. Prosecutor Jenna Collins gave him a questioning look. He didn't respond. He only glanced at Emily, who now clung to Rex like her life depended on him. Outside the courtroom, Sullivan remained in his seat, mind racing. He had seen many things in his career, but never a therapy dog react with such certainty. What had Rex sensed? In the hallway, Emily knelt beside Rex, her small hands buried in his fur. Her mother, Sarah, crouched next to her, brushing back her daughter's curls with trembling fingers. "Sweetheart, are you okay?" she whispered. Emily didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her arms wrapped tighter around Rex. A few steps away, FBI agent Jack Monroe watched. With decades of experience and a gut instinct he trusted, he knew one thing for sure. Whatever happened inside that courtroom had changed the game. He stepped closer to the judge. "That dog recognized something," he murmured. "I bet my badge on it." Judge Sullivan narrowed his eyes. "Then we need to find out what." Meanwhile, in the defense's private room, Richard Hale sat with his attorney. The smugness on his face had faded. His fingers drummed against the table. His mind replayed that moment over and over. "She knows," he muttered. "What?" his lawyer asked. "Nothing," Hale said, forcing a smile. But inside, panic had begun to fester. That dog. He hadn't considered the dog would be a threat. As the recess neared its end, Judge Sullivan adjusted his robe and took a deep breath. He didn't believe in coincidences. Something about this case had shifted, and he intended to follow the trail. Before the silence, before the terror, Emily Carter had been a bright, chattering child. At 5 years old, she could fill a room with stories and laughter. Her favorite things were fairy tales, stuffed animals, and bedtime stories read in silly voices. She had never known fear until that day. The man's warm smile vanished in an instant, replaced by something sharp and dangerous. He grabbed Emily's arm. She froze. She froze. She didn't scream. She didn't struggle. She just stared, wide-eyed, as if paralyzed by fear. Across the street, Martha Jenkins, a retired nurse out walking her terrier, saw it all. "Hey, get away from that child!" she shouted, her voice strong despite her age. The man hesitated. His grip loosened, just for a second. It was enough. Emily yanked her arm free and sprinted toward her mother. Sarah scooped her up, clutching her child just as the van's engine roared to life. Tires screeched. The vehicle sped away, leaving only black skid marks behind. Emily didn't cry. She didn't speak. She buried her face in her mother's shoulder and shook. The police arrived minutes later. Detective Jack Monroe, a veteran of the FBI's Child Abduction Task Force, took control. His graying hair and sharp eyes told the story of a man who had spent his life. "This fits the pattern," Monroe muttered, flipping through a worn notebook. 4 kids missing in the last 18 months, all near home, all lured with stories about puppies. His partner, Agent Lisa Grant, knelt beside Emily. "Sweetheart, do you remember what the man looked like?" she asked gently. Silence. Sarah smoothed Emily's hair. "Honey, you're safe now. Can you tell the officer what he looked like?" But Emily said nothing. She didn't nod. She didn't shake her head. Her hands just clung tighter to her mother's sweater. "She hasn't said a word since I picked her up," Sarah whispered, fear creeping into her voice. "Selective mutism," Agent Grant murmured. "Trauma response." Monroe sighed. "Without a statement, we don't have much. A man, a black van. That's not a..." But Sarah still felt helpless. The light inside her daughter had dimmed, and in the days that followed, it faded even more. Emily stopped playing. She stopped drawing. She flinched at passing cars. She barely slept, and when she did, her nights were filled with silent nightmares. No screams, only soft gasps of terror. Her parents tried everything. Bedtime stories, her favorite bunny. Nothing worked. Their daughter, the girl they knew, was slipping away. One evening, Sarah sat at the kitchen table, eyes hollow from exhaustion. "The therapist suggested a support animal," she said softly. "A therapy dog." David looked doubtful. "You think that'll help?" "I don't know," she admitted, "but I'm willing to try anything." They couldn't have known how much that decision would change everything. Because even though Emily had lost her voice, someone else could still hear her. His name was Rex. Inside Dr. Laura Bennett's Animal Rehabilitation Center, the air smelled of antiseptic and fur. The room was quiet, just the soft ticking of a clock and the occasional sound of paws on linoleum. Sarah sat nervously, clutching her skirt. Emily peeked from behind her shoulder, silent and withdrawn. Laura knelt to the child's eye level, her voice soft and kind. "Hi, Emily. My name is Laura. I work with special dogs. Dogs who help kids who've been through scary things." Emily said nothing. Her eyes flicked toward Rex, a large German shepherd sitting patiently just a few feet away. He didn't move, didn't bark, just watched, calm and steady. "You don't have to come close," Laura continued. "Rex will wait, but if you're ready, you can hold out your hand. He'll come to you." Emily hesitated. Then, inch by inch, she stepped forward. Her small hand lifted, shy, unsure. Laura nodded once. That was all it took. Rex lowered his head and took a slow, careful step. Then another, and another. When his warm breath touched her fingers, something shifted. Emily's hand curled slightly into his fur. The connection was made. Sarah gasped softly. It was the first time Emily had reached for anyone since the attack. "Oh, baby," she whispered, tears in her eyes. Emily didn't let go. She held on as if Rex were the only solid thing left in her world. Over the weeks that followed, Emily and Rex became inseparable. she would sit beside him for hours, her small fingers gently tracing the long scar on his side. When nightmares woke her in the night, it was Rex's steady breathing that calmed her. She still didn't speak, but she began to draw again. The drawings were simple. A little girl and a dog, always standing together, always facing down shadowy shapes. Over and over, she drew them. Then, one quiet afternoon in Laura's office, something remarkable happened. Emily sat cross-legged on the floor, watching Rex perform a symbol. "Good boy," she whispered. The words were so faint, so tentative, that Sarah thought she'd imagined them. But when she looked, Emily was staring at Rex, lips slightly parted in wonder. It was real. Tears filled Sarah's eyes. "It's a start," Laura whispered, placing a hand on Sarah's arm. "She trusts him. Sometimes trust is the first step back." Sarah nodded. "Then we'll follow wherever that trust leads." And it led them exactly where they never expected. Back into that courtroom, where the man who had haunted her daughter would finally face the truth. The room was full. Reporters, attorneys, families, all of them waiting, watching. At the defense table sat Richard Hale, calm, collected, unreadable. But beside her mother, Emily held Rex's leash with quiet strength. The German shepherd sat at attention, unmoving, his eyes fixed on the man across the room. The tension thickened. All rise. Judge Mark Sullivan entered, his expression as sharp as ever. He had already ruled that the support dog could remain with the child, though he knew not everyone agreed. "Before we begin," Sullivan said, "we will hear arguments regarding the presence of the support animal." Michael Graves, the defense attorney, stood. "Your Honor, we understand the emotional trauma the child has suffered, but the presence of a large German shepherd in court may prejudice the jury. We respectfully request that the animal be removed during testimony." Before he finished, Prosecutor Jenna Collins was already standing. "Your Honor, Emily Carter is 5 years old. She suffers from selective mutism. Rex is not a pet. He is a medically approved support animal. Without him, she cannot participate." Sullivan leaned back in his chair. "I've reviewed the documentation. The dog remains." There was a murmur in the courtroom, some agreeing, others grumbling. The trial began. The prosecution built a powerful case. They described a man who had spent years manipulating and preying on children. Witness after witness testified. Then Martha Jenkins took the stand. She described the moment she saw Hale near Emily, the way he knelt beside her, the way his grip tightened before she yelled and he fled. Her voice cracked as she recalled the look in his eyes. Then it was Emily's turn. The courtroom fell silent as the small girl was led to the stand, her mother walking beside her every step. Sarah helped her into the chair, then reluctantly stepped back, her heart in her throat. Jenna Collins approached the witness stand slowly. "Hi, Emily," she said gently. "I know this is scary. You don't have to speak. You can nod or shake your head if that feels better. And if you ever want a break, just let us know." Emily didn't look at her. Her gaze stayed locked on the table. Her breathing was shallow, her hands trembling, until Rex pressed gently against her leg. She reached down and gripped his fur. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Good," Jenna smiled. "Emily, can you tell us who was with you in your yard that day?" For a long moment, Emily didn't move. Then, as silent as a whisper, she raised her hand and pointed directly at Richard Hale. He didn't move. His face barely changed, but something in his eyes shifted. Just for a second, a flicker of recognition, of fear, and Rex saw it. He went still, completely still. His ears twitched, his muscles tightened. Then came the growl. low, deep, and filled with knowing. "Emily," Jenna said gently, "did this man say anything to you that day?" The child didn't speak. Instead, she made a small motion with her hand, the same subtle sign she had learned in therapy, the same one Rex had been trained to understand. And just like before, Rex reacted immediately. His ears snapped forward, his muscles coiled. A deep, guttural growl rumbled from his chest, not aggressive, but clear. A warning. The courtroom froze. Even Judge Sullivan leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Defense Attorney Graves stood up abruptly. "Your Honor, I object. This is pure theatrics." But Sullivan wasn't listening. He was watching Rex. The dog was completely still, gaze locked onto Hale, as if he recognized something only he could sense. The same response he'd shown when Emily first saw Hale. "Miss Collins," Sullivan said, turning to Jenna, "has this dog had any prior contact with the defendant?" Jenna looked uncertain. "Not to my knowledge, Your Honor." Sullivan turned to the defense table. "Mr. Hale, have you encountered this dog before?" For the first time, Hale showed something: fear. His fingers, once calm, were clenched into a fist. He said nothing. Jenna leaned in to whisper something to her co-counsel. Within moments, a member of the prosecution team rushed out of the courtroom. "What is going on?" Graves demanded. "Your Honor," Jenna said, "we request a short recess. We believe new evidence may be emerging." Sullivan stared at her for a moment. Then he nodded. 15-minute recess. As the room emptied, whispers rippled like wildfire. Had Rex just identified Richard Hale? And if so, from where? Judge Sullivan had a feeling the answer would change everything. The next morning, Jenna Collins returned to court with a motion to introduce new forensic evidence. Soil samples from Hale's van had been analyzed. They pointed to a specific place, a remote, abandoned cabin in the northern woods. "We request 24 hours to investigate the site," Jenna told the court. Graves objected immediately. "This is a delay tactic. There's no hard evidence linking my client to any cabin." But Judge Sullivan, silence. "Motion granted. You have 24 hours. And just like that, the team mobilized, and they brought Rex with them. By early afternoon, the search team reached the remote cabin. The place was silent, still. Wind rustled through the trees, but the air felt heavy. Dust covered the porch, yet faint footprints led to the back. Rex was the first to react. As they approached, his ears pricked up, his nose twitched, his body stiffened. He let out a low growl and began pacing near the threshold. "Something's here," Monroe said. "He knows." The team entered cautiously, weapons drawn. Inside, the space was sparse. A table, a cot, a few empty cans. But near the back wall, Monroe noticed something odd: a seam in the wooden floor. He knelt, knocked. Hollow. "There's something under here." They pried the boards loose. A narrow staircase spiraled into darkness. They descended, slowly, and what they found made their blood run cold. Children's toys, small shoe, and in the farthest corner, chained, alive, was a girl, Emma Sullivan, 8 years old, missing for 6 months. Her clothes were torn, her skin pale, but her eyes lit up when she saw them. "Help," she whispered, voice raw and broken. Rex lunged forward, whining, trying to reach her. Monroe rushed in, unlocking the chains and scooping her up. "You're safe now," he said softly. "We've got you." Emma clung to him, sobbing silently into his shoulder. The search was over, but back in the courthouse, the trial was not. Richard Hale sat stiffly at the defense table, his hands shaking slightly. I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered. Jenna stepped forward. "Your DNA was on the chains, Mr. Hale. Your tires match the tracks outside the cabin. And Emma Sullivan is alive. She can testify. The courtroom fell into silence. Rex, lying beside Emily, suddenly lifted his head. His ears perked. A low growl built in his chest. Slowly, deliberately, he walked forward, eyes locked on Hale. Hale flinched. Everyone saw it. The man who had sat smugly for days now looked pale. His hands clutched the table. He turned to his lawyer and whispered something frantically. Then, in a barely audible voice, he said, "I want to change my plea." Gasps echoed through the courtroom. "Mr. Hale," Judge Sullivan said, "are you pleading guilty?" Hale nodded. Yes. The trial ended abruptly, sending shockwaves through the country. Richard Hale was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But the true heroes of this case weren't just the prosecutors or the agents. It was a 5-year-old girl who found the courage to point, and the dog who never left her side. In the days that followed the sentencing, something extraordinary happened. Emily spoke. She stood in the quiet of her bedroom, Rex sitting calmly in front of her. Her small hands cradled his big head, her thumbs brushing gently against his ears. And then, in a soft whisper, she said, "Thank you." That their little head parents wept, not just for the words, but for what they meant. Little girl was coming back, that she was healing, that somewhere deep inside, light had started to shine again. Rex wagged his tail and nuzzled her cheek, because he knew some bonds are stronger than fear. Some stories end not with silence, but with hope. And some heroes walk on 4 legs.